I think the easiest way we can kind of just ask this is, do Americans like the way that Trump's handling his job and compare it to how they felt about Joe Biden? So this is the net approval rating. You look at Joe Biden back in 2024, he was 22 points underwater. Holy cow. You look at Donald Trump, it's just a different planet entirely. I mean, the gulf between these two is wider than the Gulf of America or Mexico, depending on which side of the aisle you stand on. He's at +2. So look, at this particular point, Americans are giving Donald Trump the benefit of the doubt. He's doing considerably better than Joe Biden was doing on the handling of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And so on this simple question, I think Americans are saying, okay, Donald Trump's doing all right on this.
Right, let's go to that tense relationship in the Oval Office on the weekend. We'll also talk in relation to China too. It was a very different situation when President Zelenskyy landed in London. You can see vision there of the UK Peace Summit, and obviously he met with the King there as well, a little bit warmer than it was in Washington. Let's pull it apart. There's some late breaking news too in relation to Labor and the Port of Darwin. We'll get to that now with my next guest, Director at Strategic Analysis Australia, Peter Jennings. Peter, welcome. We'll get into the Oval Office.
Thanks,
you probably
Peter.
heard Chris Uhlmann's comments there. In a top line, what did you make of the weekend?
Look, I found it shocking, and it took some time to think through what's really going on here. I don't believe the conspiracy theories which say that somehow Trump lured Zelenskyy in to embarrass him. I think what Trump was doing was he genuinely wanted to have his rare earths agreement signed, and this was derailed by an intemperate J.D. Vance. That, to me, is the explanation. But as to how long it's going to impact, Peter, I don't know. I mean, there's a fresh new thing happens every day in Washington, D.C., which says it's a new team in town and they're going to do things very differently. And a week from now, it may well be that what we're seeing is Zelenskyy signing up to an agreement with Trump and everything's fine. And Trump will, of course, then be able to say, hey, I've had a real victory here in getting the Europeans to spend more on defence, be more serious about defence. And that would be true. That would actually be something Trump has achieved that his three predecessors have failed to achieve. So, it doesn't necessarily have to turn out to be a long-term disaster. But nevertheless, it's also no way to do diplomacy, and one can only hope that Trump learns from that.
No, nothing in terms of analysis with this president is a straight line, right? And I was like you. I watched it unfold. I watched the play out in London. It takes a while to digest, and to try and read the tea leaves as much as it is, it's not easy. And anyone who thinks they knew straight away where this was landing, I think, doesn't understand Trump land. But I will make the point, there's a lot of commentary that this is designed to force Zelenskyy out, to be able to, at least in a negotiation with Putin, offer his head as some sort of win that Putin can sell to the people of Russia. There's been a lot of talk that there's something odd by the fact that Ukraine has not had an election while they've been at war. I went back and had a look. Britain didn't have an election from roughly 1935 until 1945. So not having an election in a time of war is not unusual.
That's absolutely right. Look, 20% of Ukraine is occupied, and millions of Ukrainians are out the country, in Poland and elsewhere. I just don't know how an election could be conducted in those circumstances. And I think one thing that would be demonstrated by an election, as and when it's held, is that Ukrainians think of themselves as a separate country to Russia. That's something that's been reinforced by Putin's behaviour. So this is not going to produce an outcome with a Ukrainian government compliant to Putin. And I'm not quite sure what it is that the Trump team might think that's shown by that. And in any event, there are the complexities, as I've said, of how do you conduct a free and fair vote when 20% of the country is occupied and millions of people are in exile overseas. So it seems to me to be a bit of a distraction to the main game here, which is how do we get the Russians to cease their aggression, agree to leave areas of land which they have occupied, and give the Ukrainians some sense of security in a post-ceasefire world. I think that's the challenge, and I don't see how that can be avoided by the Trump team bullying Zelenskyy in the Oval Office.